What's going on, everybody, and welcome to your Week 6 NFL Fantasy Football Preview Podcast. This is Josh, and I am joined by Stokes. What's going on, Stokes?
Cheer.
And back again is Hadley. What's up, Hadley?
What's up, man? Classic Stokes intro there. I love it.
Always original, often imitated, never duplicated. We have some special guests for this podcast tonight, guys. If you can hear in the background, you hear some special crickets. I am broadcasting from my back deck. We have a guest in town this weekend, and they're staying downstairs where I normally do podcasts, and I have a 1.5-year-old daughter who's asleep, so doing it on the main floor and potentially waking her up is not a risk I'm willing to take. So to the deck I go. Hopefully the crickets and the wind don't become too distracting. But hey, Stokes, football, you got to play through the elements, right?
That's right.
All right, well, we had one game already in the books. The San Diego Chargers upset the Denver Broncos on Thursday Night Football. Nothing to talk about there because this is a preview show, not a review show. So let's look ahead to Sunday, guys, and let's start with a game in Buffalo between the San Francisco 49ers and the Buffalo Bills. The big story for this game is Colin Kaepernick gets the nod over Blaine Gabbert. They are coming off of a week-and-a-half rest as they played last Thursday against the Arizona Cardinals. For the Bills, injury-wise, Charles Clay is questionable, but we mentioned this last week. This is something you're going to see throughout the season. It's not anything to worry about. The Bills just rest him throughout the week. He never practices on Wednesday. He's always limited on Thursday and Friday. His ankle is going to be something that he's listed on the report for, but it's more of a veteran rest day than anything else. Unless it gets worse, he's going to play. And for the Niners, they look relatively healthy. There is some concern that their best guard, Beatles, may not practice. Defensively, they still are missing a couple of key cogs there. They might be missing their top defensive lineman they got in the draft, Buckner, but he's questionable. That could help the Bills' offense. Hadley, let's start with you. What jumps out to you about this game?
We had a little discussion in our chat about whether we're playing LaShawn McCoy. I mean, obviously season long, yes, but for daily, it's interesting. I don't know how heavily owned he's going to be on the main sites, because in the Fantasy Aces GPP is 53%, which is like ridiculous. So I mean, if we think he's going to be up there like 30+% owned, then I think you want to look for a play away from LaShawn McCoy at running back.
So the conversation we were talking about is I made kind of a throwaway comment to Stokes and Hadley a couple days ago saying I'm fading LaShawn McCoy this week. And for the guys that may not know what that means, Hadley, what does it mean when I say I'm fading him?
Looking to avoid him in daily fantasy. So most likely we're talking about tournaments there, because Cash you'll want to play him, but.
And you're fading him for the purpose of you're thinking that everybody else has him, so you're almost gambling on if they all have him and I don't, and he doesn't do as well as they expect, then that's a built-in advantage.
Exactly. So I mean, if we go off the ridiculous ownership he had in Fantasy Aces, right, 53%. If he just has an average game and then you pick, let's say DeMarco Murray at, maybe he's in the 20% versus 50% range, you're going to have such an advantage over all the people that played LaShawn McCoy. So that's what you're looking at there.
So the reason why I was fading LaShawn McCoy, one, yes, I expected heavy ownership. I didn't realize it was going to be in the 50% like Hadley's saying. But I also, like I said last week, McCoy is a very productive player. I think he's a guy, obviously, in your season long you put in and you feel great about. As a guy who's the fourth most expensive back on DraftKings, I'm a little nervous about that because he's not in an offense that's going to put up 30 points a week. They have hit 30 a couple times this season, but it's been a lot of special teams touchdowns, defensive touchdowns. Offensively, the Bills are very limited, especially in the passing game, but that's how you get to the red zone. McCoy has not been a touchdown-dependent player really since his prime days in Philadelphia. Now, he does have 4 touchdowns on the season this year, but like I mentioned last week, I expect those touchdown numbers to dip. I do think the yardage is going to be there, and he's going to have a tremendous season. I think LaShawn McCoy could run for 150 yards this weekend on San Francisco, but for the price you're paying on DraftKings, which is nearly $7,000, you need $7,000. You need LaShawn McCoy to really get you about 21 points in a PPR league to justify that. I think he could do that, but I'd much rather go with a guy like a Le'Veon Bell or even a David Johnson and for offenses that I think are going to put up in that 30-point range, and they're going to also be involved in the passing game because I think you're going to get more bang for your buck. Stokes, you thought I was crazy for fading McCoy, right?
In general, yes, but I mean, with him being 53% owned in on another site, I think it makes a lot of sense to fade him. I in season long, I love him obviously, and you're not going to sit him, but and I was considering having him in my lineup for any tournament that I was going to play, but I mean, if Hadley's giving me a 53% number, I mean, I've got to fade him.
Okay, fellas, another interesting name in this game is Jeremy Curley. He came on really strong last week in garbage time against the Cardinals. I am going to say that I'm avoiding Jeremy Curley in daily this week. Even if you used a waiver claim on him after last week, I'm avoiding him in season long if I have any other options because I'm nervous about the move from Gabbert to Kaepernick for Curley's future because Gabbert is a check down artist, and for an underneath receiver like Curley, that can be great. To me, I actually have one eye on Torrey Smith. There's no way I'm playing him this week, but he's a guy I'm watching who I think could become Kaepernick's favorite target. But I want to see what happens in this Kaepernick offense before I play anybody. Hadley, am I nuts for thinking that about Curley?
No, I think we'll do a wait and see with San Fran. You can consider Carlos Hyde just because of the usage and the low price tag there, like 5,100 on DraftKings. And if you look at it points per game wise, Shady's at 20.6 and Carlos Hyde's at 19.5 in DraftKings scoring, and yet you have a $1,800 discount there. So
I like Carlos Hyde this week. As an aside.
He gets the ball no matter what, so.
It's definitely a volume play, Stokes. It's kind of like we mentioned last week with Melvin Gordon. Another guy I'd like to mention on the Bills side of things is Charles Clay. He really hasn't had a big game yet this year. He did go about 5 for 75 yards, I believe, last week against the Rams. You can see slowly but surely in this new Anthony Lynn offense with life after Sammy Watkins, because he's still on IR, that they're trying to find creative ways to get Charles Clay the ball. He's lining up more at wide receiver. He's lining up in the slot. He's not just lining up at tight end. And I think that's going to continue, and I could see a big Charles Clay week. This week, I love him if you're a guy that has a Jordan Reed injury, or maybe you're nervous about somebody like I don't know why you would be, but Gronkowski. I mean, Gronkowski and Bennett are both questionable, but they're going to play. But if you're needing a tight end this week, Charles Clay could be a guy that you want to pick off the scrap heap. Guys, Bills-Niners looks to be what I would think is a pretty low-scoring game. Anybody else we should touch on in this game? I'll start with you, Hadley.
The only thing I'll say is right now the Bills are 8-point favorites with, if you look at implied total based on spread and favorites, 26.25. That is fourth highest on the main slate behind the Steelers, Panthers, and Patriots. So Vegas thinks the Bills are going to put up points somehow. That's going to come from somewhere.
Well, on paper, it is one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL against the best rush offense in the NFL, which is why Shady is ranked so high this week. Stokes, along those lines, Tyrod Taylor is very cheap in daily. I believe he's at 50. I'm going to look that up real quick while I'm getting that. But while I get the official number, Stokes, as a bargain quarterback, what do you think about Tyrod Taylor this week?
53 on DK.
There you go. Thank you.
I think he would be a player that you could obviously roll with. I think if I'm going to go for a bargain bin type of quarterbacks, I'm going to go with another option. I love Tyrod, obviously, but I just don't. It's very difficult to tell with him week to week how they're going to attack teams, and this could be the week where Shady and Gillislee go off, and then Tyrod has 20 passes for 95 yards and 30 rushing yards, but the Bills could still win by 14 to 21 points. I'd rather go with a quarterback that I know is gonna end up throwing the ball a lot and/or getting touchdowns if I'm gonna go that long.
One other thing I want to mention: season long. Excuse me for the wind here on the outside. Season-long LeSean McCoy owners. There's been some confusion this year with Carlos Williams being cut, Reggie Bush being signed. Who is the handcuff you want to Shady? Without question, it is Mike Gillislee. Reggie Bush has been absolutely ghost in this offense. The rookie Jonathan Williams has been not involved whatsoever. It is Mike Gillislee. If you have Shady and you're wondering who to handcuff him with, it's going to be him. So, Hadley, any final thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I wouldn't go there with Taylor, even how cheap he is on DK, but that's about it.
All right, guys, let's move on to a matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars, fresh off a bye week, going to Chicago to take on the Chicago Bears. Now, Stokes, you are a master of this podcast thing because you said you wouldn't take Taylor in daily. You'd go with some other cheap options, but you didn't say who they were because in your mind, that's kind of a tease. Keep listening. We'll get to it. I have a feeling one of those options is in this game. As we look at the injury report, it looks like the Jaguars are going to get Julius Thomas back, but Stokes, I'm going to feed it to you. What do you think of the Bears' offense this week against Jacksonville?
I think that Brian Hoyer, yet again, is a great option. And I'm sort of thinking that he's going to pepper Alshon Jeffrey with targets because of their missed link in the last game, fourth down. Vontae Davis played the fourth down wrong, and Alshon was open in the end zone. I think that Hoyer is going to give him 10, 12, 14 targets this game just to appease him of the missed thing last game. So of course I love Hoyer because he passes the ball a lot, and he's accurate with the football, which is what you want.
Hoyer's going for 5,800 on DraftKings this week. Hadley, what stands out to you in this matchup?
I'm gonna double down on not playing Hoyer, even though that didn't work for me last week in terms of how many yards he put up. But Jacksonville's kind of more giving it up to the run this year versus the pass. And if Chicago's going to be favored, I'd say let's play Jordan Howard instead of Brian Hoyer.
I like that call. What do you, from the Jacksonville side of things, they did get it rolling last week, albeit against Indy in London. Is there anybody on the Jacksonville offense? Obviously, you're playing Allen Robinson in season long. You may not have a better option than Allen Hurns, although you might. He's a borderline wide receiver 3 in most formats. Blake Bortles was probably drafted as your QB1, but I'm assuming by now you've found other options. Hadley, what do you think about this Jacksonville offense this week?
Yeah, probably not going there with Bortles, but you got to like Allen Robinson at what's going to be probably a pretty depressed ownership. And, I mean, he has as much upside as pretty much like any non-Antonio player, I guess I would say.
Now, Stokes, let's go back to your Alshon Jeffrey comment. Obviously, season long, if you have him, you're playing him because you drafted him. And when he's healthy, he produces, especially when Cutler's the quarterback now. With the switch to Hoyer, he's been more in that low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 range. But if you want to play him this week, he is questionable with an injury. He's probably going to play, but that's something you have to keep in mind, that he's always a guy that you could lose on the third play of the game when he goes out. He's also 7,100 on DraftKings, so you're paying a pretty big price for a guy that hasn't really produced with this quarterback. So when you say you're high on Jeffrey this week, are you saying put him in your season-long lineup and feel good about it, or are you saying you're going to roll him out there in some daily lineups?
It's very likely that I will roll him out in daily lineups, and in season long, you're absolutely going to play him, no doubt about it. I just think that because he threw a bit of a tantrum after he was missed on that touchdown or on that fourth down, and they usually pepper the diva receivers after they have their tantrum. So that's essentially what I'm banking on, and I'm banking on the fact that Hoyer is accurate enough to get the ball to him. With Jay Cutler, he's going to force the ball to Alshon, but 40% of those passes are he may not get to him. So I think Hoyer is going to be willing to throw the jump ball to Alshon, and I just expect a big game out of both of them.
And I'm going to go the other way. I'm not going to touch Alshon. To me, I'm looking at this chemistry. I just don't like what I'm seeing between Hoyer and Alshon. I totally understand what Stokes is saying, especially when you saw the way Alshon Jeffrey lost his mind last week when he was wide open in the end zone, which with what could have been the game-winning touchdown. But right now, there seems like there's some connection here between Hoyer and Meredith, and I'm going to ride that train, especially since Meredith right now is still very cheap for a guy that's been producing at a high level. I think I have it up right here. He is... Well, I had it up right here. He's 4,100 on DraftKings. That's great value to me as a guy you could put as your wide receiver 3 and spend money elsewhere, put him in your flex. So let's talk real quick about the Jacksonville running backs. I think at this point it's safe to say that Yeldon is the guy if either of them you want, but are either of them worth playing this week, Hadley?
Don't think so, but just to touch on Meredith, he's cheap on FanDuel as well, but the ownership's going to be there, so I don't know if that's what you want to target with kind of, it might be a volatile play where he's a little bit up and down.
And then Stokes, do you echo what he says about not playing either of their running backs this week?
Yes. I wouldn't touch either of them at all in season long or daily. I mean, if you have Yeldon and you're hit with buys, I guess you're gonna throw Yeldon out there. But overall, you're just not.
Guys, let's backtrack real quick. Let's go back to the Bills-Niners. Bills' defense is a fantastic play this week, both in season long and daily. They're very expensive. So, I mean, if you want to pay up for a defense, I guess, go ahead. But season long, if you're looking for a waiver wire defense, the Bills probably were out there, and that's a team you could go with. No, I wouldn't play either the Jaguars or the Bears. Let's move on to the Rams taking on the Detroit Lions. And this is a mash unit game because the Rams are still missing a lot of key pieces on defense. Tremaine Johnson, their best cornerback, is out, which could be good for the Lions. Their three defensive linemen that missed last week, Robert Quinn, William Hayes, and Michael Brockers, are all questionable, limited on Friday. So just check the report on Sunday. If they're out again, you could look for the Lions to take advantage in the running game, although as we're about to get to, they may not have any healthy running backs to take advantage at this point. Offensively,
I got one for you.
Do you? For the Lions offense, we have Eric Ebron out, Theo Riddick out, Dwayne Washington is questionable. So, Stokes, with this Lions offense, what running back were you referring to?
Well, I wasn't referring to a running back per se, but they said they're going to get Golden Tate involved in the running game a little bit more. And as you guys well know, I love me some Golden Tate.
Well, to me that makes sense, Hadley, because if a guy proves to be pointless trying to run and catch the ball, you might as well go ahead and hand it to him if that's the only way it can work.
Yeah, no, not going there with Golden Tate still.
Hadley, what are your thoughts on this game overall?
I like Marvin Jones to have a nice bounce back game here. He's been a little quiet recently after starting off really hot there. Like you said, about Tremaine Johnson being out, that was pretty much their only serviceable corner, so I don't see who they're going to use to slow him down. I like Stafford's price on DraftKings. I might go there, not on FanDuel. The Lions are really bad covering the slot receiver, so maybe throw Tavon Austin in there. I mean, he's pretty darn cheap, especially on DK, so. And you need value.
And along those lines, if you watch the Rams, they do everything they can to get Tavon Austin involved. They line him up at running back. They throw him bubble screens. So he's going to touch the ball. Whether or not they can sustain drives and he can get in the end zone is another thing. But he's also a guy that at any point in time could pop a 60-yard touchdown or even get a cheap return touchdown. Stokes, any thoughts on this game outside of your Golden Tate love?
No, not really. I like Todd Gurley. I think he's going to get the volume, but I mean, he's just in an unfortunate situation. So, never mind.
Well, it's worth mentioning that Haloti Ngata is going to be out and Levy's going to be out for the Lions. So they're missing some studs on defense, and the Rams aren't going to put up a lot of sustained drives. And Gurley is still really struggling to find any open space in the running game, but the volume is there, and this is not what you would call a super resistant defense, so it's possible he has a big breakout game. I wouldn't bet on it, though. Hadley?
I mean, we've talked about the numbers, and, you posted that thing in the chat with the running back averages, I think, before they get hit, and Todd Gurley is all under 1 yard before he gets hit, no matter what side they're running, left, right, or up the middle. But the Lions' run defense was already bad, and yeah, like you said, they're missing a couple key pieces. They haven't allowed a rushing touchdown yet, but they're 10th in rush yards per game. So I mean, the rushing touchdown should be coming. So if there's ever a game that he might have a get right game, it should be this one.
Yeah, the Rams' offensive line is a mess. I talked to a guy who works in the league now. He didn't tell me. I didn't tell him I'm doing a podcast, and I don't want to use his name on here. But he's familiar with the Rams, and in his opinion, he thinks the Rams are built for a power run offense, and yet all they do is zone blocking. So it's like square peg round hole. But Jeff Fisher's coaching career has been a lot of square peg round holes. So the chart that Hadley was referring to is yards before contact per attempt, and the Rams are Left, right, middle, terrible. Now, there's some teams, like, just for example, like, I'm just going to say a random team, the Kansas City Chiefs. When they run left, they're getting 4 yards per carry before they even have contact. That's a phenomenal number. But when they run in the middle, they're at .74. And when they run to the right, they're at 1.77. The Rams are under 1 yard left, right, middle, meaning there is no bread and butter run in their offense. Now, a team we talked about earlier, the Bills, 2.6 to the left, 4.6 to the middle, 1.7 to the right. So that's phenomenal. And another team, Atlanta, is very similar, has great numbers left, right, and middle. So you look at that, it could be offensive line, could be scheme, could be running backs not hitting the hole, but for whatever reason, whatever they're doing in LA is not working in the running game. Any final thoughts on this game, guys? Start with you, Hadley.
No, I don't think I have anything else for this one.
Stokes?
No, I mean, Riddick is out. They said that I also read that they might try to get Forsett involved, but he's not on the DK roster, so you can't really take advantage of that. Because Forsett's now on the Lions. So he might be on your free agent wire in season long, so he might be worth picking up.
It's a good name to keep in mind, maybe stash on your roster and see what happens this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Miami to take on the Miami Dolphins, but the Steelers have some injuries of their own. Marcus Wheaton is out. Sammy Coates is questionable with a finger injury, but looks like he's probably going to play mainly based on necessity because they don't really have anybody else. And on Miami, Jordan Cameron remains out, and it looks like we could be getting Arian Foster back this week. So, guys, let's start with Pittsburgh. Missing Wheaton. If Coates does play after a strong game last week, you would think this gets set up for a big game for him. But if Coates is hampered, let's talk about this for a second. Would you expect, obviously, Brown and Bell are going to get theirs, but that third guy in the offense, is it going to be another receiver like an Eli Rogers, or are we looking at Jesse James? Stokes, I'll start with you.
I think I'd be more inclined to go with, if Coates is not going to get the ball, I'd be more inclined to go with Eli Rogers. It seemed like in that first game, he got really involved with the offense, and for whatever reason, he stopped getting involved. And I think that if he's been re-elevated to that number 2 guy, I think he can have a big game. I wouldn't trust Jesse James as far as it's just very unpredictable. It seems like the only targets he gets are down in the goal line situations. And, I mean, you'd expect him to be down in there a lot, but you never know.
Now, it's interesting about Pittsburgh because we're also used to them scoring a lot of points, but their home road splits are pretty eye-opening. They don't travel as well offensively as you would like, but I still expect them in this matchup to put up points against a very bad Miami Dolphins defense. Hadley, what jumps out to you about this game?
Yeah, so those home road splits are definitely something to worry about, particularly for Big Ben in the passing game. Some weird non-line movement, I guess. 76% of the public's on Pittsburgh, which makes sense, right? But the line hasn't moved from what I could see. It stayed at 7.5. I mean, they have the highest total on the board, so you figure they're going to put up points. Le'Veon Bell, I didn't write it down, but looking at the home road splits, I also looked at Le'Veon Bell. He's actually a little bit better on the road, whereas the passing game suffers on the road.
I like that a lot. I think this is a huge Bell week, and you say that, and you're like, wow, you're really going out on a limb there, Josh. But with Wheaton out, you don't know what you're going to get from Coates. Stokes already said it about Jesse James. He's not a guy that's really involved in the middle of the field. I could see Big Ben leaning real heavily on Le'Veon Bell in the passing game, and I think they're going to be able to just run it at will against this Miami Dolphins defense, led by Mario Williams, who's already being called out by his coach for not giving good effort. Guys, let's talk about the Dolphins, though. Yeah, shocker, Stokes. There's a couple of fan bases in the NFL that are really surprised by that. Let's talk about the Dolphins. Arian Foster comes back. That doesn't do much for me. You guys can chime in and let me know if that does anything for you. But I want to talk about Jarvis Landry. I know he had a rough game. Was it last week where he didn't produce? Mm-hmm. But I think I love him this week. I think they're going to be down. He consistently gets the ball. Last game was an anomaly. I think Jarvis Landry is going to have a monster game for a guy that is going to be playing from behind, and Tannehill trusts him. I could see Landry having one of those double-digit catch games where he goes over the 100-yard mark and gets in the end zone. So if you have him and you're fantasy season long, obviously you're playing him, but I love him in daily too, especially in DraftKings, where you're rewarded for a full point per reception. Hadley, anything about the Dolphins offense that stands out?
Yeah, 100%. You want to fire up Landry. If Pittsburgh's going to score that many points, then Miami's going to be in comeback mode. And yeah, like you said, I think you could throw out last week. I mean, every week this year, except for last week, he was double-digit targets, and then last week it was 3 for some reason. He caught all 3, but I mean, what are you going to do with that? So, and by the way, again with Antonio Brown, we talked about this last week. Last week he was like 9,600 or 9,800 or something like that. This week he's a full-blown 10,000 on your cap on DraftKings. Like, I don't know how you can justify paying 1/5 of your total salary on DraftKings for one player. You got, what do you have, 9 positions to fill on DraftKings?
Yes.
You can't do it.
Doesn't make sense, especially with the home road split you talked about with the Pittsburgh passing game. Stokes, any final thoughts on this game?
Well, with regarding Arian Foster, I think that if you told me he was going to play 50 snaps of the game, I'd be okay with that. But the thing about Arian Foster is, when he's playing the whole game, he's really good, but he could leave the game 2 or 3 plays into it. So it's very difficult to trust a player like him. But as Hadley said, I'm down with Jarvis Landry. Obviously, last week was an anomaly. Tannehill only threw 18 passes, and it's not like someone beat him out for targets because Parker got 3 targets himself. So it was just one of those weird games, and I would not be shying away from Jarvis Landry at all.
All right, guys, let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals at the New England Patriots. The injury report for Cincinnati, pretty clean, except for we're going to have another week without Tyler Eifert. And for the Patriots, everybody on their entire team is questionable. So we'll just go with that. Truthfully, anybody in their offense not named Tom Brady that you're interested in is questionable. All I can tell you is check the inactives that come out an hour and a half before the game starts. But let's go on the premise that these guys are going to play. Gronk did miss practice Friday, which is generally a concern, but it was with an illness, so I think he's going to play. Last week, guys, we said even though Brady was in and Gronk was off the injury report, we said Bennett was the play. I'm going to switch it this week, and Bennett got 3 touchdowns. We were right. Pat ourselves on the back. Hope you guys are doing the same thing because I'm patting myself on the back too. I'm going to switch it this week, and I think this is a major Gronk game. And I think as far as the Patriot offense going forward goes, my call is you start Brady, obviously, Edelman, and Gronk every week. The rest of the players on the offense, including LeGarrette Blount, you put them in your lineup and you hope for the best. There's going to be weeks where they explode, and there's going to be weeks where they go ghost. That's just typical Patriots. The studs are going to produce. The role players are going to mix and match. I am very curious to see what happens with Chris Hogan if he can stay involved in the passing game, because he had a monster first half last week, disappeared in the second, but that's because he was injured. So maybe he takes on that deep threat role in this offense and stays consistently involved. But as far as Patriots go, Edelman, Gronk, Brady, always. I think Bennett has to start sliding into that always category too, especially since they thrive on that 2 tight end offense. And then I have some thoughts on the Bengals too, but I don't want to hog this entire segment. So start with Stokes. Thoughts on this game?
See, I would probably lean towards taking another stab with Bennett because he's $2,200 cheaper than Gronk. Although you could see the game that Bennett had last week this week, but yeah, at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Bennett had 6 catches for 100 yards and not get a touchdown. And if you get that type of production for $4,500, then that's fantastic. I also like James White. He played more snaps than LeGarrette Blount, I'm pretty sure, and Brady had no trouble seamlessly putting him back into the game. He got 6 targets and five rushes. I think that for $4,100, you could do worse with a running back. And as far as the Patriots go, of course you start Tom Brady because he's Tom friggin' Brady.
And then one thing I also want to mention on the Patriots running backs is Dion Lewis is eligible to come back in the next few weeks, but the Patriot beat reporters I follow on Twitter are all saying that they expect the Patriots to be very conservative with him. So if you're in season long and you're thinking about stashing him on your bench, I think you can probably wait another week or two, unless you have a really deep bench, and then you do what you want, because I think when he comes back, he could be pretty heavily involved. Hadley, thoughts on this game?
Thinking about AJ Green, but I'm not sure. Patriots, they have that reputation where they take away the number one option. I don't think James White is cheap enough to really consider. You have Bernard, who plays a similar role for the Bengals, but probably more likely to get actual rushing attempts, and he's only 500 more. You can fire up Brady again. I think I might play Brady with no stack, so meaning not using any of his weapons and just filling out the rest of my roster with people not from the Patriots.
Because you just don't know.
Yeah, they spread it around.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. A lot of people think when you take a quarterback, you have to have a complimentary wide receiver or tight end on that team. Not true. You mentioned Gio Bernard. I love Gio Bernard this week. I think he's going to have a monster game. Hadley mentioned Bill Belichick's reputation for taking away your number one option. That is A.J. Green. You also look at Gio Bernard. He's been outperforming Jeremy Hill consistently on a week-in, week-out basis. Hill does what he does. He has a couple of big games here and there, and then he struggles. And he's coming off of an injury. I think this sets up for a big Gio Bernard game. For one, he's the pass-catching back. I expect the Patriots to be ahead big, and the Bengals have to catch up and throw, and that screams Gio Bernard. And I also think he's going to get some splits in the run game, too. So if you have Gio Bernard in season long, play him, especially if it's a PPR league. And if you're on DraftKings, I'd have no problem throwing Gio Bernard as one of your top two running backs. And either one of you want to dispute me on that before we move on to the next game?
No, sir.
No, I mean I brought up Gio Bernard, right? So
yeah,
I'm down with it.
You're like I already said what you said, so I liked it when I said it, and I liked it when you said it too.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, speaking of games that could have a lot of points, let's talk about the Carolina Panthers traveling to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Cam Newton is expected back out of concussion protocol after missing last week. Jonathan Stewart's also expected back. And for the Panthers defense, they're going to be down two of their top cornerbacks, as James Bradbury and Robert McClain are both expected to be out this game. Kelvin Benjamin was limited on Friday, but he projects to play. And keep an eye on Mark Ingram. Something popped up with him. I don't remember if it was an illness or not. He wasn't on the injury report that was on Friday, but I think maybe he popped up today. Just keep an eye on that, because if for whatever reason he misses, Tim Hightower, get him immediately in your lineup, because there's going to be tons of points in this game. Hadley, what stands out to you about this game?
Yeah, so it was just an illness on Thursday, and then he came back to practice Friday, so no worries there. Carolina's been decent on a yards per carry basis against the running back. If you look at it, they're 3.4 yards per carry. I think Jacquizz Rodgers took 30-something carries to get to 100 yards, but the Superdome, man, the Saints, you gotta love Breeze the God.
Yeah, Stokes, you're a big fan of the Saints in that dome. What stands out to you about this game?
I was surprised to see Kelvin Benjamin is now 8,100. I thought about it, I was like, well, I guess they're playing the Saints, so I guess that makes sense. But, I mean, I'd be steering clear of Kelvin Benjamin, even though I know he's going to get the targets because Cam's back out there, but I'm going to steer clear. I think this is going to be a huge game for Cam just because he's back and he's going to try to make this emphatic as possible. And, I mean, the Panthers really need this game. So I would expect him to have a huge game. And, of course, I love Breeze in the Dome, so I would choose him. I don't know who I would pick out of the two if I had to choose, though.
Oh, between Cam and Breeze?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd probably lean Breeze because I think, the Panthers probably have a better chance of winning this game. And Breeze's defense never lets them down. They always give up points, so Breeze is going to have to always catch up. And Breeze has a healthy array of weapons right now. There's a lot of question marks on the guys on Carolina, unfortunately, with Jonathan Stewart and Kelvin Benjamin being banged up. Guys, here's what I would tell you about Jonathan Stewart. It's unfortunate that the Panthers are so banged up in a matchup against the Saints, because if you're an owner of a team of a player in the NFC South, you wait for these Saints games to pop up and just count your points. What I would tell you about Jonathan Stewart is when the inactives come out, check for the name Cameron Artis-Payne. Artis-Payne has been splitting the carries with Fozzie Whitaker with Jonathan Stewart out, but when Stewart is healthy, Artis-Payne is generally inactive because he offers nothing on special teams. So I think if Artis-Payne is active tomorrow in New Orleans, that's a sign that even though Stewart's healthy, he may not be ready for a full workload. So I think if Artis-Payne is active, I'm avoiding all Panthers backs unless I'm in a pinch and have to play one. If Artis-Payne is inactive, I feel like you have to roll Jonathan Stewart out there because there's going to be plenty of points. You don't want to miss out on a starting running back. I do have some thoughts on the Saints receivers, but I don't want to just jump from topic to topic. You guys have any other thoughts on Jonathan Stewart? Start with you, Hadley.
I would just not play him either way. Like, playing Jonathan Stewart is one of the more tilty situations you can get yourself into because they'll just run Cam Newton as a fucking running back and get a touchdown there, or they'll fucking give a fullback dive to Mike Tolbert and you're just like slamming your head against a wall if you played Jonathan Stewart. You want to play Greg Olsen for sure in this game. Like, he always kills the Saints as well as Cam Newton, so definitely fire up Cam Newton, Drew Brees, Greg Olsen, pretty much everyone that's not the Carolina running game.
Greg Olsen's the most expensive tight end on DraftKings this week, $7,000, $3,000 more than Gronk. So, yes, Greg Olsen is expected to put up points this week. From the New
He's 300, not 3,000. Settle down.
Oh, I'm sorry, 300. Yeah, 300. Math, not my strong point. From the Saints standpoint, I love all their receivers. The Panthers have been picked on. It's so weird to think of them like this because they were probably a fantasy defense that went second or third off the board in your season-long drafts, but they missed Josh Norman. They had a great rookie in Bradbury they're really high on. He hasn't been on the field. McLean's hurt. They can't cover receivers right now. That's a problem. And the Saints have plenty of them. Mike Thomas, Willie Snead are producing. Willie Snead says his toe is about 95%. Willie Snead, you can pretty much lock him in for 5 to 6 catches a game, and Breeze looks to him in the red zone. Breeze has been looking to Mike Thomas a lot in the red zone. I got a sneaky suspicion this is a Brandon Cooks game, though. I think if it gets into a shootout, Breeze is going to try to take some shots deep to Cooks. I don't see anybody in that Panthers secondary that can run with him. Cooks has been quiet the last couple of weeks, guys. He had some matchups with some tough corners. Verrett was healthy when they played the Chargers. Trufant has been shutting down receivers in Atlanta, and he shut Cooks down on Monday Night Football. So I think this is a week where Cooks gets off against the Panthers. Any final thoughts on this game, Stokes?
No, none.
Play the Saints defense?
Absolutely, I've got them in all my lineups, actually.
All right, Hadley, any final thoughts?
I think you can consider Fleener. The Panthers linebackers, in theory, are like good in coverage, but yet they've been giving it up to the tight end. If you just look at like DraftKings scoring, see the big green number next to Coby Fleener, because Panthers are 25th against the tight end. And, I mean, he's going to be lower owned than the other receiving options, maybe Michael Thomas, too. I think Michael Thomas actually leads the team in red zone targets, so you can look at that, too. So, there you go.
Michael Thomas is starting to look like a guy that is slowly taking over that Marcus Colston role, so we'll see if that continues. It's good to see. Let's move on to the New York Giants hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Interesting matchup from an NFL perspective from two teams that are really trying to find themselves after a couple of disappointing weeks. From a fantasy perspective, the Ravens are pretty banged up. Steve Smith is doubtful, probably not going to play in this game. The Ravens are going to be down 2 starting offensive linemen as Ronnie Stanley and Marshall Yanda are both doubtful. Mike Wallace had a scare, but he had a full practice on Friday, so he's probably going to play. And good news for Giants wide receivers as Ravens cornerback Sharice Wright had full practice on Friday, Hadley, and he is good to go. So feel good about Beckham and Shepard in this matchup. Hadley, what stands out to you about this game?
Yeah, everyone was looking at Beckham for the bounce back spot last week, and he was okay. He got you 5 catches, which is not great, but they did target him 12 times, and he got in the end zone. I mean, things are trending up a little bit, so hopefully his price is a little bit decreased on FanDuel, so I think you could see firing up OBJ again.
From a Giants perspective, I didn't mention this. Rashad Jennings is expected to be back, which in my opinion makes all of the Giants running backs useless. Not that you'd be rushing to start one against the Ravens anyway, but only play Rashad Jennings if you have him in season long and you literally have no other options available to you. Stokes, what do you like about this matchup?
Nothing. I don't like Eli. I mean, he started out the season so well, and then he just, for whatever reason, he just became terrible. And I'd probably, fade all the wide receivers, even though the Ravens seem to be bad. I just can't trust Eli enough. I can see Beckham getting 12 targets again, though. But,
it's worth mentioning about Beckham. He put up monster numbers his first couple years in the league, and I think he's a fantastic player, and his numbers are going to come. But it's worth mentioning the Giants' defense was horrendous those 2 years, and they were in almost a New Orleans Saints-like position where they had to throw a lot. This year, that hasn't really been the case. Their defense has been playing pretty stout. Not great, but at least middle of the pack, and they're not having to throw it 60 times a game like they had to in the past. So I think Beckham's numbers will come, but maybe just sitting here waiting for him to get to that Antonio Brown level, like maybe some of us thought that he was going to get to this year. It's just not going to happen. But I do like Beckham in this matchup. I don't like the Ravens cornerbacks at all. Guys, do any Ravens pass catchers stand out to you with the loss of Steve Smith? Is it just going to be more Dennis Pitta, or do you even look at a guy like a Kamar Aiken, as the Giants have been struggling against slot receivers this year? Hadley?
So Dennis Pitta is behind. So Julian Edelman and John Brown have 38 targets and no touchdowns. They're the only two that have more targets than Dennis Pitta, who has 37 without a touchdown. So he's getting you pretty consistently. We talked about this last week, where he's getting around 50 yards, at least like 5-6 catches. So if he gets that plus a touchdown, you're going to be pretty happy. So,
Stokes, any final thoughts on this game?
I think Rashad Perriman could be something sneaky to go along with. If this were Madden, he would be a must start, but this is not Madden, and I think that he has the talent, and I think with each game he's getting better and better. He had a touchdown overturned, I believe, against the Washington team, and I just like Perriman.
The talent.
I'm not going to start him. I would pick him up in season long just to see what's going to happen, but I wouldn't start him.
Maybe an interesting tournament flyer on Daily as a guy that nobody else is really going to probably have in their lineup. Really quickly, I like the Giants' defense this week quite a bit as a tournament play. They're a little more expensive than I was hoping for, but if you're looking for a streaming defense in season long, the Giants are a defense I have picked up, as I have finally given up on the Houston Texans in the leagues I had them in. Hadley, do you have any final thoughts on this game?
I was looking at Terrence West, but the Giants are playing really good run defense. So even though I think part of the reason Trestman got fired is because how the heck do you only give Terrence West the ball 11 times when he was averaging nearly 9 yards per carry? Yeah, the Giants have a really good run defense, so maybe not.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with life after Mark Trestman. That's a guy who has gone from hero to zero very quickly in the NFL. Let's move on to the Tennessee Titans hosting the Cleveland Browns. Cody Kessler, after leaving last week's game, looks like he's going to play. Had a full practice on Friday. Should start for the Browns. For the Titans, there's no injuries of note. Stokes, what stands out to you about this game? DeMarco?
I think I said it last week. I don't like DeMarco Murray, even though he's producing. But anyway, I think Terrell Pryor may bounce back. Maybe. I like Delaney Walker. That's about it. For some reason, I just don't want to give in to DeMarco Murray being productive. Even though the statistics would suggest that I am a complete fool, but I'm just not ready. I'm not ready.
What is it about DeMarco Murray you don't like? That he's running it too well, or that he's catching it a lot?
I'm a big fan of Derrick Henry, so that could be my bias. I want him to get touches. I want him to lead the team, stuff like that. But it's just me being a fool. So you can.
Well, I love DeMarco Murray this week. I think he's going to go nuts. He's been a huge surprise, a pleasant surprise for the Titans as their run-first approach. They've drafted tons of offensive linemen in the draft. Obviously, the mobility of Mariota helps out here. I think he's almost become a no-brainer start, especially against the lowly Cleveland Browns. I think I could easily see him finishing as the top back this week, right up there with Le'Veon Bell in my predictions. So I think that DeMarco Murray is going to have a monster week, both running and pass catching. Maybe they get a big lead, and Stokes' guy Derrick Henry comes in off the bench and does some things. What do you guys think about Mariota as a cheaper daily option, Hadley?
Yeah, so, I mean, the Browns are giving it up on defense any which way you want it. They're giving it up to quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, tight end. You could do a full Titans stack of Mariota with Delaney and throw DeMarco at the running back spot because he's getting all the carries and he's getting some receptions. So I don't even think that's crazy this week. So
we like the Titans. Stokes, you mentioned Terrell Pryor. What about any other Browns you would consider starting in this game? Crowell, Stokes, or no?
No, sir. No, sir.
Mm-mm.
At that price, I'd probably just go Gio instead of Crowell. So no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I think Hadley said Delaney Walker. Obviously, want to get him in your lineup as Mariota looks his way early and often. Let's go to Washington and talk about an NFC East divisional matchup as the Philadelphia Eagles take on the Redskins. The big news for this game, guys, Jordan Reed is out with a concussion, a scary situation for a guy. This will be his 6th concussion in his career. So this could be something, if you're a season-long Jordan Reed owner, you might want to start making contingency plans, not just for this week, obviously, but for the weeks to come, because the concussion protocol, you're in it until your symptoms go away. It's non-team protocol, so it's independent doctors putting you through various tests, and for a guy with his history, they're going to err on the side of caution. So also for the Redskins, Doxson remains out, their rookie receiver they took in the first round. And for the Eagles, Ryan Matthews wasn't on the injury report, but he did miss practice due to an illness, so something to keep an eye on. He had a big game last week, even though I hated him last week, so great. Stokes, what stands out to you about this game?
Even though Reed is out, I'm not going with Vernon Davis. Philadelphia plays the tight end pretty well, so I'm just not gonna assume that because Vernon Davis is the tight end now that he's going to get all the targets. Other than that, I like Ryan Matthews. I like how the offense. I like how they work him into the offense, and overall, that's pretty much it. Just Ryan Matthews. I don't think we can trust the consistency with whether Jordan Matthews is going to get the ball or not. And I think the only thing that I could trust would be that Ryan Matthews is going to get his touches.
So Jordan Matthews had a strong start to the season, has kind of tailed off the last couple of weeks, but it is worth noting that Josh Norman, while he does sometimes travel with the best receiver, does not play the slot, and that's where Jordan Matthews lines up. So maybe if you're going to give Jordan Matthews one more shot to let you down, this might be the week. Because in general, the Redskins secondary is one you can pick on, and if you're not getting the Josh Norman matchup, it certainly is one you can pick on. So I could see maybe Matthews having a bounce-back game in this one. I totally echo what Stokes says about not deferring to Vernon Davis in this tight end matchup. I actually think Jamison Crowder, who I have been down on because his targets have steadily been going down, could be a guy that sees an increase in looks with the loss of Jordan Reed. But to me, in the passing game for Washington, you want to look at Deshaun Jackson and really nobody else. Hadley, what are your thoughts?
Jordan Matthews, okay play. Obviously, you're playing him. Well, I think obviously you're playing him in season long. I'm not sure how you would look into 3 better wide receivers or anyway. Nothing. No racial slurs this week. We're keeping our racial slurs to a minimum. So there you go.
Okay, I hope I haven't said that R word on here. Maybe because I know you guys have been.
Have 3 times already.
I have? Okay.
Yes.
I apologize. I apologize to anybody out there that's offended by that. The Washington football team. Let's move on. Great. Kansas City Chiefs travel to Oakland.
Perfect segue.
Great. To take on the Raiders. And the football team from Kansas City that dresses in red appears to be pretty healthy heading into this division rival matchup. And there are reports that Latavius Murray is going to be out with a toe injury, and there's going to be a lot of broken hearts in the stands this week as announcement has come down that they have been approved for a stadium in Las Vegas. So Raiders fans have to start really seriously preparing for life after the NFL. Guys, in this matchup, I'll just kick it to you guys before I give my thoughts. Hadley, Raiders, Chiefs, what stands out?
Derek Carr is going to be a nice quarterback option for us this week. Should go a little overlooked. I'm wondering how many people are going to be on Amari Cooper after the big game, but I think it's not going to be too crazy. You can probably fire him up. And you can go on the other side. You could play Macklin and Kelsey are decent plays as well. I don't know if I'll go there with Alex Smith, just because everything he throws is like 5 yards or less. But the Raiders give it up through the air. So
Raiders are a bad defense despite making some plays this offseason to get in some defensive help. Stokes, what stands out to you this game?
I love Travis Kelsey.
Shocker!
That's my dog. I love that dude.
You have a poster of his on your wall at home, don't you?
Is my camera on? But other than Kelsey, I like Cooper as well. It's very difficult to tell how Oakland's gonna dole out the carries, so I'd probably fade both of the options there. So I mean, it makes it be Kelsey, Cooper. I'm also gonna leave Crabtree alone this week. I left him alone last week too, but this week especially. It really depends to me who Peters is going to be on, and I think he's more likely to play on Crabtree because Cooper is a faster guy.
I'm going to disagree with you guys a little bit on Carr this week. I think Carr could have a little bit of a struggle. I think he'll get his touchdowns. I don't know. I guess if you get your touchdowns, you're fine. I watch him. I think he's good, but I think he's a product of his receivers making some fantastic catches sometimes. So I'm waiting for that week where it doesn't all click. Now, for the Chiefs, let's talk about season long for a second, because there's people out there that drafted Jamal Charles relatively high, and then he really hasn't done much this year. And they probably, if they were smart, they handcuffed him with Spencer Ware. This week, Jamal Charles, Spencer Ware, Shakandrick West. I even saw Nile Davis is going to play this week. So what do you do if you have Jamal Charles and Spencer Ware on your season-long roster and you need to play one? Hadley?
Yeah, that's really tough. Because Jamal Charles, I think he had some quote about how he was like ready to go for the Pittsburgh game. They gave him all of 2 carries and 1 passing target. So it's like, what are you going to do with that? I mean, Spencer Ware is probably still going to be involved, so I think he's maybe the safer play. But I'd like to not play either of them if possible.
Which is a shame in a game that projects to have quite a bit of points. It'd be nice if you knew going in which one of your Chiefs running back was going to eat, but it probably could be running back by committee. Stokes, do you have a strong feeling either way about a Chiefs running back?
No, not at all. I would probably take a flyer on Charles because of his price and the fact that when he's on, he's one of the most dynamic backs in the NFL. But it's really difficult. Really difficult.
And if you think about it, this is kind of a desperate situation for the Chiefs because they're coming off of a bye. They're 2-2. Last time they were on the field, they got throttled by the Steelers on primetime television. Charles has now had 2 weeks to rest. If you look at his price on daily, I looked at it earlier and I was tempted. I was like, oh man, like he's going to explode at some point, and this is a pretty nice price and a good matchup, but I just couldn't pull the trigger. I could see why somebody might in a tournament, but I'm going to agree with you guys. I'm going to avoid at all costs. Just to wrap up some points that you guys have already made, I love Travis Kelce, like you guys have said. And I'm going to take back what I said about Carr. I like Carr this week. I'm not going to say that I love him as a guy that'll be my DFS starter, but I think he'll get his enough points to justify it if you decide to put it in there. So let's
Chiefs are getting no pressure on the quarterback right now. They are like they're dead last in QB hits with 15, and they're second to last with 5 sacks. And Oakland's offensive line is just phenomenal right now. So
they made some big moves this offseason to get some offensive linemen, and it's paid off for them. So let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers. It appears we're still going to be another week away from seeing Dez Bryant. He's questionable, but the guys that cover the team say it's probably not going to be this week. Jared Cook is still out, so Richard Rodgers is the guy that you would have as your tight end in Green Bay if you wanted to go that route. Running back-wise, James Starks was ruled out Saturday, and it looks like Eddie Lacy is going to play despite being hampered by an ankle injury. And for the Green Bay defense, Sam Shields remains out. So that could be nice for a Dallas receiver, although Dez is out, so maybe it's nice for Cole Beasley. Stokes, what stands out to you about this game?
I don't care what the stats say. I'm going to tote Zeke Elliott out there behind that offensive line and the way he's been able to get going these last few weeks. I would expect him to be, or I would hope that the ranking is going to make people want to use someone else other than Zeke, but if they don't care just like I don't care, he's going to be highly owned because he's doing a great job, and he's getting the carries, and he's doing a great job with them. And I love Aaron Rodgers in this particular game. I think that the Cowboys defense is better than we thought coming into the season, but I don't think they're that much better. I expect Aaron Rodgers to – he's going to give us one, and I think this is the one.
Hadley, how about you?
So – obviously, I threw a little bit of shade about Zeke Elliott last week, so that was, just great. I actually ended up playing him on one team, but the rest of the team was kind of shit. So that was one of the first big tests, right? The Cincy run defense was pretty good. Yeah, the Packers' run defense is good, but who have they played? I mean, look at the game log, right? They played just a bunch of shitty running backs. You had the New York Giants running backs, right? You had the Detroit Lions running backs.
McKinnon,
you had Minnesota.
Jacksonville.
You had Minnesota, who still had Peterson for a little bit, but I mean they've been shit. All these running backs they've played have been bad against everyone else, not just Green Bay. So I don't necessarily think that Green Bay is like this powerhouse against the run. And if everyone thinks that they are, that just means we're getting like he's the best producing running back right now. In terms of carries, like there's people who are mixing it in with the pass that are being a little bit more productive fantasy points wise, but leads the league in rushing yards, and it's only going up.
I don't think there's a defense out there that could shut down this running game. As far as like shut it down to where they won't produce. I think this offensive line is too talented. We talked about the yards before contact per attempt. And Dallas is excellent on the right side. They're excellent in the middle, and they're above average on the left. So it's anywhere you look. I think Pac-Man Jones made the comment last week that his son could run behind that offensive line and produce. That was some serious shade thrown at Zeke Elliott. But you can't argue with the production right now. As far as Packer receivers goes, guys, there's been some talk about Devontae Adams this week. What do you think about that, Hadley?
Yeah, I'm not going to play any Packers. The Dallas plays ball control. They usually own time of possession. If they run the ball like we think they're going to be able to run the ball, it's not leaving a lot of plays to be made. And the ghost of Morris Claiborne has risen here. He's like one of the better rated corners, from advanced metrics. So I don't know why you would try and force in Packers guys when there's no evidence right now that that's going to be a good play against Dallas.
Quickly, guys, Dak Prescott daily quarterback, yes or no?
No.
Stokes?
I think I think his floor is like 17 points, but I wouldn't.
His ceiling is 20.
There you go.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. It's not much fluctuation. It's between that and that. So I wouldn't. I don't think the upside is great enough.
And I guess if you want a Dallas receiver to throw in there, I guess go with Cole Beasley. Sure.
Sure.
Yep.
Christ Butler. One of the guys I like, Levitan, started calling him Christ Butler.
Right.
But he gets some red zone looks for them. He had a decent little game against San Fran, but I wouldn't go there with any of the Cowboys other than Zeke.
Yeah, there's got to be better options out there, especially if you're in season long. All right, guys, or especially in daily too. Guys, let's talk about the surprising Atlanta Falcons off of a big win in Denver last week, traveling to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. No injury concerns, serious either way in this game, although I guess Thomas Rawls remains out, but Christine Michael has that job and he's taking it and running with it. For the Seahawks, they might be without Cam Chancellor, which could help guys like Julio Jones. Hadley, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, not going there with the Falcons. The public's finally on the Falcons. They actually have 55% of the public bets, but they went from a 6-point dog to a 7-point dog. It's Seattle at home. It's still a real thing. I don't think they're going to put up points in this game.
I don't even know if I can justify it statistically, but when I went to my daily lineups this week, the first stack I looked at was Russell Wilson and Jimmy Graham, and it immediately made me want to log out of my daily lineups because I was like, what am I doing? Jimmy Graham? But I'm telling you what, I just have a feeling this game, like this could be a big Russell Wilson game. Stokes, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Jimmy Graham has had two back-to-back great games. Maybe they're finally figuring out that, hey, Jimmy Graham's actually good, guys. We can throw him the ball. But overall, I wouldn't want to start the Seattle Seahawks defense against the Atlanta offense because you just don't know. Because Julio Jones can do some Julio Jones type of things, but at the same time, if he were shut down, you wouldn't be surprised. And if he went for 150, I don't think you'd be surprised either. So I think Christine Michael is probably the only commodity I would trust in this game. Actually, I would trust Russell Wilson as well because I think that he's really good, and I would expect him to be healthy. Because if he has his legs, he makes the defense look a lot worse.
Let's talk Atlanta running backs for a second because when the splits we were talking about earlier, yards before contact per attempt, the two most impressive teams from left to right on that list were the Bills and then the Falcons. Excellent on the left, fantastic on the right, and then above average in the middle. And it seems like Devontae Freeman is finally starting to pull ahead in this running back by committee share, but Tevin Coleman is staying active in the passing game. So this is a two-part question. Would you play either one of them this week? You're playing Freeman in season long. You might be playing Coleman at this point in season long, even though I have no idea where his production is coming from. 1 week it's going to be as a runner, 1 week I can't project it, but the guy keeps putting up numbers. In daily, are you looking at either one of these guys because of the fact they've been consistently producing? I'll start with Stokes.
I don't. I would not trust them. I would probably. It would be an emergency situation where I would have to use one of those because if I try to put them in my lineup, I'm like, man, this is Seattle, and then I get scared away. So I think I'd search for better options. Like if I was going to go against Coleman, I would go for a guy like Gio. But I would try to find a better option.
Hadley?
So like I said, not playing the Falcons. Michael is a little interesting on the other side of the ball. He's a little too expensive on DraftKings, I feel, but you can consider him on FanDuel. And I like the passing game unless the weather report comes in and it's really bad. I've heard some rumors that it could be pretty windy and maybe some rain, but otherwise
in Seattle? No.
I like Wilson. Jimmy Graham has back-to-back 100-yard performances, and Doug Baldwin too. Atlanta has one good cornerback in Trufant, but he doesn't usually shadow, and especially Doug Baldwin moves around into the slot, stuff like that. He's probably going to avoid Trufant, and other than Trufant, Atlanta gives it up. So,
All right, guys, let's fly through the two primetime games because my computer is going to run out of battery here in about 10 minutes, and I don't have a charger source out here. We have Colts-Texans on Sunday Night Football. So just real quick, Hadley, what do you think about this matchup in general?
Initially, I wanted to be on Will Fuller, but he comes up on the injury report with a hamstring, and that's one of the injuries that you really don't like to see for a wide receiver, especially a guy that's, really speed-based and stuff like that. Like, he could be a little gimpy there, so not going there. I don't think I'm playing anyone in this game because Houston has still been really stingy against the pass. They're getting a lot of sacks, and the Colts' own line remains terrible, so don't like it. Don't like this game at all, except maybe Lamar Miller.
T.Y. Hilton's been a reception and a target monster ever since the Moncrief injury, but he also popped up on an injury report with a hip injury. That's a new injury, and that's kind of concerning. Stokes, quick thoughts on this game?
I love Lamar Miller. Jordan Howard gashed the Colts, and Lamar Miller is, I think, a much better running back. So I'd be all over Lamar Miller in this game.
Houston,
no old man Gore, Josh.
No old man Gore yet. I traded Gore this week in my league, by the way. Houston fans, close your ears for a second. Earmuffs. Stokes, I think the reason why Jordan Howard might have more success than Lamar Miller is because Brian Hoyer is better than Brock Osweiler. Houston fans probably don't want to hear that right now. It might be a sensitive subject.
Osweiler is so bad. He's so bad.
But I think they have more success in the passing game than Osweiler will. Okay, let's move on quickly to the Monday night game, and let's not much talk about with the Jets. You're going to play Marshall. You're probably not going to play Fitz. For the Cardinals, I love Josh Brown this week, and I think
John Brown.
You're not going to, John Brown. When I say you're not going to play Fitz, I'm talking about Fitzpatrick, not Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald for the Cardinals, I think you're going to play, and I think at this point in time, you don't put Michael Floyd ever in your lineup until you see him do something productive, and David Johnson is going to go nuts. Maybe not necessarily all in the running game, but in the passing game. Hadley, quickly, your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, we saw it with Le'Veon Bell, right? Against the Jets have a really good run defense, but they can give it up through the air to the running back, which David Johnson's a big part of the aerial attack. So Carson Palmer, the two receivers that you mentioned, David Johnson, no Jets.
Palmer, solid value this week on the daily quarterback lineup, 6,000. And I'm just scrolling through. It looks like there's like 12 or 13 quarterbacks behind him. A couple rough games, injury, and might be a good spot to take advantage against a banged-up secondary. Stokes, thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I do like Carson Palmer this week. I could see him going off, and at that deflated price this week, you could really take advantage of that. And I would expect him to be a bit lower on with the other big boys in this slate of games.
All right, guys, thank you for listening. This has been your Week 6 Fantasy Football Preview Podcast. For Hadley, for Stokes, this is Josh. Good luck in your fantasy matchups and your daily lineups tomorrow, and we will talk to you next week as we preview Week 7.